My name is Iris, and I'm currently a mom to Hannah and a wife to Daniel, and we have a baby along the way. I'm also a operating room nurse, and I love just seeing all the gnarly surgeries at work every day.
My name's Sam. For those of you that care, I'm a type 8 on the Enneagram. I'm an ENTJ, passionate about winning. Currently, I am married to a lovely wife, and I am also an entrepreneur with a boba shop called Boba Shark.
My name is Frances. I'm a creative multi-hyphenate entrepreneur. I am newly married, and I am passionate about traveling, my dog Willow, and pruning my rose bushes right now.
Hey everyone, welcome to our podcast. Today we wanted to do something a little bit more fun, so we wanted to do couples counseling, and we invited my business partner Quan and his recent fiance Sisi on to join us. So we're just gonna kind of go over different topics that they've picked, whether it's conflicts that they've gotten through already or conflicts that they're still working through, and then the three of us will try to provide any insight that we can. So let's go ahead and get started. I know one topic you two have mentioned that is hard, but I think it's hard for every couple, is miscommunication. You guys want to elaborate a little bit?
Sure, I can go first. I think for us, we are both people who are very patient with everyone around us, and we serve in ministry and at church, but clearly that doesn't translate to our home and our relationship, where we have zero tolerance or patience with each other.
Yeah.
So any little small thing we might say fine or it's okay, but there's this tonal difference where for me, if I say that, I don't think that I'm saying anything wrong or mean. I'm just saying it's fine, or I got it. Mm-hmm. But then for Cece to why did he respond that way? Why is he so mad and annoyed? Well, I didn't do anything. So then her response was why are you talking to me that way? And then now I'm just what? Why are you angry? And then it begins. But yeah, you can share on that.
Yeah, I think that it's I think before we started dating, this is my first relationship. So I would think that I talk with a lot of youth, I talk to other people at church. I feel I'm pretty good. I'm pretty calm. I'm pretty go with the flow. And then I enter a relationship and I'm oh, I'm not. Yeah.
Yeah. I think one of the past conflicts we had was actually Sam had a housewarming party. That was actually a big fight we had too. We just started going out maybe a month at that time at his housewarming, and because Cece's never dated, and I have all these expectations of what I think my girlfriend should be like. And one of those expectations is if something's important to me or I want you to be somewhere, you have to go. No questions, no I don't want to go, I don't know anywhere. And Cece's point of view was I don't really feel comfortable, I don't really know them. You're gonna be with your friends, you don't need me. But then I was no, I want you to go. It's important to me, you should be there. And then what got us into the fight was Cece just asked me, is Catherine gonna be there? Because if Catherine's going, I'll go. So then I was what? So Catherine's more important than me? You'll go if Catherine goes? And that's how it started. You can continue.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Because again, we just started dating. So it's yes, we're in a relationship, but also our relationship isn't as established as maybe my relationship with my friends. So I was I'd be a lot more comfortable if I had people I'm already close to there. But yeah, he was just very what? But you're supposed to do it for me. Yeah.
That just sounded like a fancy way of saying, yes, Catherine was more important than you at that point.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, of course, feelings were growing and being really emotional. And the end of the day, I was so Catherine's more important. She's yes. Basically, yes. So then for me, it's okay, I can't say anything, I can't change anything, so I just have to accept it at that point. Mm-hmm. And then I think that's where it opened us to talk about expectations, because she was how am I supposed to know that's what you're supposed to do in a relationship? How am I supposed to know that's my responsibility, that's my expectation? I've never been in a relationship, So that was her point. So she thought I was really unreasonable because I was getting angry, and she's there's all these hidden expectations that was not communicated.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other miscommunications?
I mean, I feel like miscommunication is just something that like you continue to deal with for the rest of your life because you never really know exactly what's going on in the other person's head. So it's yeah, there's definitely certain times when you like say something and it's not like clearly said, so then it could be interpreted in multiple different ways. So maybe like the intention or like what is actually being said is like interpreted differently than like what you meant and just like stuff like that. So we definitely do have to sometimes like clarify with each other like, oh, like that's actually what I meant when I said that, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're really like impatient with each other a lot, and I think part of that is I think we also assume a lot of things. Like we'll say something and then we also, for some reason, we think the worst of each other because we're both stubborn. So we never think like, oh, this person's got my back. Like they're always thinking the best of me. Like when I do something wrong, they're gonna give me the benefit of the doubt. But it's all like, he probably did that because he was angry or he's doing that because he's petty or something. And we always have that like negative like thought of each other for some reason. But when it comes to other people, like our friends, we're like, oh no, they're not like that. They
Always benefit of the doubt. Yeah.
Second triple chances.
Yes, exactly.
But for us, like they should know better. Like, how dare you?
How dare you? Oh my God, that comes up in my relationship.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
Well, I'm curious, like after that initial fight, did you guys ever sit down and talk about, for example, Quan's expectation is that Sisi should go to these events?
Yeah, I think that's like what we took out of it because going into that conversation, again, like this is my first relationship. I don't know what being like boyfriend and girlfriend means really. So I think it was just like, oh, like I didn't know that you expected this from a girlfriend because, you know, you never told me this. Like I didn't know that's like the unspoken expectation. Whereas like for him, it's like he's been in relationships before. So he's just like, I don't need to say this. It's like, it should be expected. Like I shouldn't have to tell you this, but like it is important to say these things because the other party might not like know these like unspoken rules if they haven't been in the same situation before. Yeah.
So I think you guys bring up such a good point because I feel like I totally relate in my relationship where, I mean, even being together for so long, sometimes you're like, why do I feel this way? Or like, why am I getting so upset? And I think you guys brought up a good point. It's just like, you know, these expectations that we have and sometimes we just project them onto the other person. So like when you guys when in your conflict do you realize, okay, we need to take a moment to stop and like figure out ourselves and like what is going through our brain that's making us like feel this way? Like how do you guys kind of get to that point and like how do you like kind of like talk through that?
I don't think we do it like as healthy. So usually we have like our outbursts, our tantrum outbursts.
Yeah.
And then one of us, usually me, because I'm usually the one that's like, I'm done. I'm like gonna shut down. I'm not gonna talk anymore.
Yeah,
like I'm
that's
done.
me too.
Like end of discussion, done talking. And then for Sisi, she's like, I want to talk. I want to fix our problem. Why are you okay with us having a problem, not talking about it now? And then we came to terms knowing that like the way we handle conflict is different and how we want to handle it. So we have to respect like I explained to her like the reason why I don't want to talk because if I'm going to say something, I'm going to be saying hurtful things because I'm just on the attack and defense of myself at this point. So we have to wait that through, and then later I'll be like, hey, when you said this is what you meant because it made me feel this way, or I said this because I felt you were attacking me or something.
Yeah.
And usually that's not the case because it's a misunderstanding, right?
Yeah.
So we're totally like on different wavelengths too.
Yeah.
And then now we're talking, we're like, oh wait, this is just misunderstanding. Now we're just fighting about something that just is misunderstanding.
Yeah.
And then I think because we're stubborn and we do fight to win, I guess. We kind of
Why else are we fighting? I gotta prove you wrong.
Yeah. So I think that's like our stubbornness right there,
Yeah.
where like we always want to prove like we were right, you need to apologize first.
Yeah.
Who's the one who's gonna apologize first?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's something that we are working on.
All of us are.
Yeah, I'm like a lot more emotional and he's a lot more logical in our relationship. And like the thing is, I think we're both pretty emotional. Like if we're in an argument, you know, like voices can be raised. I have a loud voice that he doesn't like sometimes. So sometimes when I'm like passionate about something, I'm not even angry.
Yeah. I'm
just like ranting. I start kind of yelling because like my voice increases. And then he's like, why are you yelling at me? And I'm like, I'm not yelling at you, I'm just loud. Yeah, so there's definitely stuff like that. But yeah, as you mentioned, like, especially toward the beginning of our relationship, like, I'm someone who's like very like, I want to resolve this now. Like, I don't want the sun to go down on our anger, right? Like we're upset at each other. We need to like figure this out. We need to talk about it. But like, that's for him, that's not how like he would best handle the situation. Like, he needs like a moment to like clear his head. Whereas for me, like, when I saw him be like, I don't want to talk right now, it's like, oh, are you giving up on having this conversation? So yeah, I think just like over time, like understanding the other person and like their personalities and like how they handle situations and how they deal with things helped a lot.
Yeah, I feel like I totally resonate with you guys, everything you said, because me and my husband, like when we get into fights, like it's volatile. I mean, it's like screaming matches. We're also both really stubborn, and it gets a little crazy, you know? But I think like we've actually reached a point where, you know, I think one, it's like definitely expectations. Like I think oversharing expectations is like really great.
Yeah.
And then also just like knowing what the other person cares about. Like, I mean, the root of it. Because I think if you know like what that person cares about, then whatever situation you're in, you can kind of navigate and be like, oh, that's that person's hot spot. So I know that like if it gets around that topic, it's going to be a little bit more sensitive. So I'm going to have to like back off, right? I wonder like in your when you guys are in moments of conflict, do you guys know when to kind of exit? Or like now you mentioned you guys learned about each other, you learned that he needs some space to process, etc. Like, have you guys figured that out where you can kind of like nip it really quick and then come back to it? Or is it still an ever evolving?
I think
Sorry. We don't like fight as often as we did in the beginning. Like when we first started dating, we saw each other like 24/7.
Yeah.
Like I was on summer break and it was like right before they opened their shop. So he was busy, but like kind of not busy yet because they didn't open just yet. So we were just like really free all the time. I think so. It was just like extended, intense exposure to each other constantly. And it's like, we're still in the process of getting to know each other, so it's just like we're like talking 24/7. We're like, and then so of course there's like a lot more conflict that comes up within like a shorter period of time. But I think now we're like definitely more used to each other, and I think like part of it is like picking your battles, and like even though like we disagree on something, sometimes it's like, okay, it's not really worth arguing about this because it's not a big deal. So kind of just, I guess.
Yeah, I think when we first started dating, I think for me, because like at this point I dated a bit of people and I'm dating to get married, right? So I'm like, I don't want to settle for anyone, and then it's like they have to be XYZ, like to a T, basically, right? And if they're not, I will mold you into that T, you know? And of course, Sisi is a very strong personality person with her.
She's like, I'm not going to be molded.
Yeah, and that's where the fight.
I am.
And then I think that's what I learned from our relationship was like, okay, I need to like, what is really important to me in a relationship and what is not. I remember one of the stupidest things that I like was talking to my sister about like, is this the right relationship? Just because we didn't like the same shows. And I was like, for the rest of my life, like we can't watch shows together. She's just gonna hate on the shows. Cause I was like, I really love the show. It's The Office, you know? So we watched one episode, and she's like, "This is the stupidest show ever. Why would anyone watch this?"
I didn't say it like that, but I don't think it's my type of humor.
That's how Quan took it though. He's like, oh, see, just hates this shit. Now she thinks I'm dumb.
But yeah, I think or at least I learned to like not try and control everything. I have a controlling personality because I want things to be a certain way, look a certain way, and of course, being in a marriage or a relationship, you can't control another human being to be that. So I learned to let go. And I think that all that has to do with like, because of our faith, you know, with God. So yeah.
I mean, I'm glad you realized that. It'd be kind of messed up.
Why did you guys break up? Oh yeah, we just didn't like the same TV show.
Sisi, we can't get married. You didn't change this when I told you to.
Basically, I can't control you.
That's all I heard. I think one thing I'm very grateful for like premarital counseling for is they, at least for me and Esther, like we were kind of forced to look at triggers and different things that may sprout some of our reactions to things. So I think earlier when Francis brought up like, oh, you know, we have these unspoken expectations because of A, B, and C things that happen in our upbringing. have there been any, I guess, revelatory moments for you two where you're like, oh, because my mom or my dad was like this, and now I'm like this, and now I transfer it onto you, type of scenarios?
Yeah, I think this is still an ongoing thing that I'm trying to let go, because Sisi grew up with how like her family taught like you need to take care of yourself. You're kind of number one. Like you provide for yourself first, and then care for other people. And you don't have to care for everyone, you know. But my family, like my mom was like, oh, you need to take care of everyone, put everyone else before yourself, right? So because of that, CT's obviously didn't grow up that way. So for me, sometimes I'd be like, oh, I feel like you're being a little selfish, or like you're being a little rude to people. Like, why don't you be friendly, go talk to everyone, like be nice? And she'd be like, why? Why do I have to be like that? And I was like, and my answer is like, I don't know, that's just what you're supposed to do, because that's how I was raised. So for me, it's like, this is common sense. Like, who are you? Like, why are you like this? Yeah.
Clearly, it's still ongoing.
Yeah, I think that actually what I thought of was like, I guess adding on, I think we're both like pretty influenced by our moms, and our moms are super different, like night and day. Like his mom is like as stereotypical of an Asian mom as you can get. Like she's kind of passive aggressive, kind of like I did all this for you, but also like, you know, kind of just Asian standards, all that. My mom is like, why don't you wear like that dress that makes your body look more sexy? You know? I'm just like, no, thank you. So like very different people, and so like obviously growing up, like our influences were very, very different, and also like the values were very different. So I do think that like I agree with what he said. Like even in marriage, like my mom is like, oh, you guys are getting married, you guys are like coming together, but like still like you need to always like it's still like you put yourself first, because you know you never know like what could happen in a marriage, and even if something does go wrong, like it's not the end of the world, because like you have yourself, and like, you know, that's like the most important. So there's like a little bit of that sense, but yeah. I do think that like what he was saying, the whole like put others before yourself, I think he's grown a lot in that in our relationship actually, because when we first started dating, he would like never say no to anything. And I'm like, it's okay to not do things because you don't want to do them. And he's like, no, I have to do this because someone asked me to do it. And I'm like, no, you don't have to, right? So just things like that.
No, I think like one of my most fond memories of Quan is like we're with like a big group of people and eating at like Jen Korean barbecue, and then I'm sitting like on the other side of the table from Quan, and then Quan just like looks over, he like sees me just not talking to anyone because I was just eating, and he like whispers to someone, and then that person that he whispers to comes over, and they start talking to me. I'm like, why are you here? Like, I'm trying to eat. Oh, Quan was worried that you're like really bored, so like, he sent me over, and I was like, no, I'm good. But I think that just like kind of characterizes Quan's, you know, his need to like have everyone else be taken care of. And so it's just like really funny to kind of see how that plays out in your two's relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then so we also talked a little bit about assumptions. So I kind of want to diverge into like maybe some of the roles that you two have had, whether in different aspects of life. So I know you two, or at least Quan loves cooking, so I'm curious, you know, how does your relationship play out when it comes to the kitchen?
Oh, I wash the dishes. And I like cut everything so he can like put it in. That's my role. Yeah. Sous chef.
Yeah,
Sous chef.
yeah.
Head chef. Yeah.
So we had an incident in the beginning. We call it the chicken incident.
The chicken.
Where I came home from work to Cece's house, so we were both hangry, and I was following a recipe that told me to pan sear chicken and then bake it and then make a glaze and all this other stuff for it. And at each step of the way, Cece kept asking, why are you doing that? And I was just like, I'm just doing it because the recipe says so. But why does the recipe say that? So each question was like another level of anger. And then it came to a part where I was like, I don't know. I don't know. And then she says, you don't know? How can you be doing something that you don't know? Why would you do something you don't know? And then I was saying I don't. And then here's the assumption where Cece is like, I know you know. Why can't you tell me? It only takes you 2 seconds. And then I just kept saying I don't know. So then,
Because you really didn't know. She thought you were withholding information.
yeah, because I just didn't want to talk to her anymore.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm done. I don't want to talk to you.
Just let me cook my chicken.
Yeah, and it's also because maybe the reason I made that assumption was because he's just sounded very like annoyed or like, oh, I don't know.
Like aloof
and then
about
kind of like,
it.
I'm like cooking, okay, whatever, I don't know. Yeah, right? And then so I was like, I'm just asking you a simple question. Like, you know, you have time to answer it like as you're kind of waiting for this chicken in the oven, you know? But I guess like for him, it was like he actually didn't know and he's just following the recipe and he doesn't care and he's hungry and he wants to eat. Whereas for me, I'm like watching him like put it on the stove and then like do something in the pan and then like move it somewhere else and do something else over there and then do this again and then put it in the oven. And I'm just like, oh, like why can't you like just bake it or like just do this? Why does it need to be like both at the same time? Like I always thought that. Because I'm not like a very big cook. I don't use ovens. Like our ovens at home are strictly for storing pots. So like I don't really know like what baking does to food as much as like stir frying, because like our family just stir fries everything. So you know, like I just like want to know. But like for him, he's like, why are you questioning me, right? But I'm like just purely curious on like, oh, like what happens to the chicken if you like do both instead of just one?
Yeah.
Like
You're
does
like,
that
I
make it
genuinely
taste
wanna
better?
know.
Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah, so at the end of that ordeal, we had a time and place talk, and kitchen is my role. Don't question me when I'm
Right.
hangry. So we set some boundaries. So I was like, I said from now on, if I get angry at you while I'm hangry and you know that I'm hangry and you're questioning me and I'm yelling at you, I'm not in the fault at all. I already set like that rule. So like from now on, if I yell at you or anything, it's your fault. I told you already. And then of course we divided like the chores in the house for future. Like she said, she'll wash dishes. She'll never take out trash.
Yeah.
That's the thing. And then I told her I don't mind cooking for the rest of our lives, you know, because I like cooking. And then you just have to not question anything I do.
Yeah.
You can question while we're eating
Yeah.
and be like, oh, how did you make this? And like, what's in this, right? But not during the process, like don't. And like the thing with me, and if Sam knows me too at work, I'm a little scatterbrained when I'm in the kitchen. So like if people talk to me, I'm just like, in, out, in, out. And I'm like kind of listening, but not really until I stop or finish what I made. And then I can like answer or formulate my thoughts. I think it was a lot of us, I guess, setting boundaries and rules to like, this is how I am and this is how I work and understanding that. And of course, like compromising. Yeah.
I would like to also just acknowledge that hangriness is like a real thing in conflict, okay? Like, I feel like there's been so many examples where I'm like, dude, like, I think I'm just angry because I'm really hungry. Or like, we just got into this fight because like, I'm hungry, you know? So I'm like, oh, like, that's so, it sounds really stupid, but that is actually sometimes the basis for conflict.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just gotta eat food because later you're like, why did we even have that fight? I just know I was right.
Yeah.
I was wrong.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure exactly about what.
Yeah. Or like, you eat and you're like, I feel better.
Yeah.
I'm good now. Like, I don't really need to fight.
Yeah, we're good, right? From
Yeah,
earlier.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then of course a big thing that all couples who get married go through is wedding planning, and that tends to lead to lots of conflict. So, any funny stories or memorable stories so far?
Oh, well, there was this one time that we were like talking over the phone and I was like super upset because I don't want to offend anyone in the wedding industry, but I was like, the wedding industry is a scam. Everything is overpriced. Like, why am I paying this premium just because it's a wedding? Like, blah, blah, blah. I was like going on this rant because I was just like, this is not like worth the money. Like, I could do the same exact thing for this much, but like they're charging this much anyway. So I was like, I think because like we wanted to budget our wedding like more strictly, and like we were very financially conscious of like the costs of everything. It was kind of like a big deal for us to like look at costs and consider that as like a main factor. And then, yeah, I just had this like rant and I was like upset and I was like, oh, whatever, we're just doing Chipotle. You know? But like, I'm not necessarily serious about doing Chipotle. It's just like in the moment, I'm like ranting and I'm upset and I'm just like, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't need any of this, you know? But then for him, he was like, oh, she wants to do Chipotle. what? That was not in our conversation.
So the day that I found out this was a joke, so we've been wedding planning for 2 months now, from now, and we hung out with Catherine around youth retreat time, maybe like 2-3 weeks ago. So during that time is when I found out, oh, all these are just jokes or rant, like I'm just kidding, I wasn't serious. But during these conversations on the phone, I was like, so what are we gonna do about food? Because food costs about this much. And Cece's like, I don't know, this is a ripoff. Just do Chipotle. I'm like, that doesn't sound like a joke or rap. Ask me a serious question, and that's your response.
Serious right
So of course she'll say Chipotle, and I was like, oh, why do you even have a wedding? Because then I go through extreme.
Right.
I'm like, why even put up with this? Like, I remember like in our wedding planning, I've gone to the point where I'm just like, let's not have a wedding, let's just go court. I'm tired.
Yeah.
I'm done.
Yeah.
Like, I'm over this. And then I think it's also because when we were budgeting for a wedding, we were being very, very conscious because like we didn't want to ask family for help. Even though I knew family was going to help regardless, because that's just how our culture is, you know? And that's the problem we're having right now. Because now we're at the end, we're like, okay, we budget for what we can budget for. But now family's like, no, your budget can be bigger. Like, let me show you other places. So I was like, no, we're tired. Like Tuesday's our deadline, like I said. I think it's just, the funny thing is our wedding planning was hard because I like outdoors. I like kind of that rustic feel. Cece's like that clean, modern, indoor, like
Minimalist.
Yeah, minimalist.
Not
sleep.
too like dirt.
No dirt.
Yeah,
No
dirty.
dirty.
But like actual dirt. Like not just dirty.
So we had a lot of arguments. We're like, okay, what's the middle ground? What's the middle ground,
Yeah.
right? And then we thought vineyard, but then every single place we went to, we had little things that we had nitpick at, right? So vineyards was the drinking situation, about the alcohol costs, and like we're not really big wine people. We're big cocktail people. So we have to have cocktails.
Yeah.
That's like our thing. And then we go to other places. We're like, oh no, the bathrooms are ugly. Everything's so beautiful and perfect, but the bathroom's ugly. And then we can have a venue where like the outdoor, everything is pretty, and there's just one section that you have to see. You don't even have to be there, but the fact that you can see it and it's ugly, that bothers us.
So there's just been no perfect venue for you two, sounds like.
Yeah. I mean, the only way we can have a perfect venue is just up that budget price. Because once the budget goes up, like opportunities open.
Right.
That's true.
Well, I'm going to put my wedding planner hat on and say that I think with wedding planning, you just have to really stick to what's the most important thing to the both of you guys. So if you guys haven't identified that, do that. And everything else, like, it doesn't matter. If you just identify like 1 or 2 things that are important, just like stick with that. And then ultimately, at the end of the day, I shouldn't even say this, the wedding doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it's just really about the both of you, you know, and you need to stand firm on that because I've seen so many couples that just get like so caught up in all the details and all the fights. That's not what this is about. Like, sure, it's about a day and photos, but really it's about the both of you.
I think that was like another, like jumping back to how our families influence us. I think for Sisi, the wedding was like, it's my day, it's about me. And that's kind of like how she grew up, right? Her mom said like, it's you first, like take care of your needs.
Yeah.
And for me, it was like, take care of everyone else's needs. So when it came to wedding planning for me, it was like, I don't need to be happy. I don't want my guests to be happy,
Yeah.
have everything they need. Like, I don't want to hear any guests complain or whatever. And she's like, if a guest's gonna complain, get out of my way.
I'm like, if you're gonna attend my wedding and complain about things, like, why am I friends with you? Like, I'm paying money for your food. Like, I'm paying for this decoration that you're looking at. Anyway, yeah, but I mean, realistically, like, I know, of course, like, I do consider like the guests and like their experience and all of that because that's super important. But it's just like for me going into it, like my first thing that I'm looking at is like what am I looking for, right? Like, or what do I want? Because I want our wedding to represent like us, like who we are, and not just represent like what we think our guests would like. And I think that's definitely been a pretty big conversation through. We haven't done a lot of wedding planning yet. It's mainly just been venue shopping. But yeah, just throughout this process, it's been a lot of like, oh, how do we find that balance between like the things that we like, but maybe like particular guests, especially maybe the older parents and the older generation might not appreciate. And how do we kind of find that balance? Like, are we okay with giving up this if it will make other people happy? Or is this something that's like really important to us and we want to keep it and we really want to value that. So yeah, that's definitely been a big conversation.
Yeah, I think that's good. Like, just, I feel like you guys already are doing it, but just constantly check in with each other and how like the both of you guys feel versus like outside voices, you know? And I think you guys are doing that with what you were just saying about evaluating things, so.
Yeah, but I think it's
that up,
hard
yeah.
because it's like, you know, people are opinionated and like,
Shut it out. Whose wedding is it anyways, right? There's a whole show about that.
yeah. For
But it is harder when it's, I guess it's like if it's your family that's those voices, it's like how do you filter between honoring them but also like being true to who you
Yeah.
are.
For sure.
Yeah, I think it's really hard because we have that generational gap. We have like us being more Americanized, we're not very Asian, but our parents are like, we don't eat American food, we only eat Asian food. And I actually had a talk with my parents about that recently. And they're like, they asked like, what's the food at that venue? I was like, oh, it's American. And they're like, why don't you just rent a Chinese restaurant there? I was like, I'm paying this much for a photographer and you want them to take pictures inside a restaurant? Like,
An
what?
Asian banquet with chipper
So I was like,
Yes.
And then I was like, you guys want to eat that? You can eat the next day. I can take you all dim sum. You guys want dim sum? We can eat that day. This happened to be my wedding day.
And that's like my mom, when she found out that like, you know, we would probably have American food, she's like, okay, fine. You guys can do whatever you want. Like, I know you guys are American, but I'm gonna go order Chinese takeout and I'll order like the big trays and I'll just put it on the side. And then for the people who don't want to eat American food, they'll just eat my food. Like, I'll just do that like on the side. And I'm like, no, like I'm already paying money for this food. Don't just bring in outside food and be like, oh, okay, well, here's a second option, right?
funny. Like I rules my purse.
Yeah, so instead of like, oh, what kind of meat you would like, it's like, which cuisine would you want?
Yeah.
American, Asian, and then that's going to be on your RSVPs.
I mean, at this point, you might as well just bring in Chipotle. So make this an international affair.
Yeah, less cost for you guys.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely think that throughout this process, I'm like a little bit confused on what my parents think weddings look like. Because one of the venues that they actually like the most is called Saratoga Springs, and it has two different sections. It has like this bigger section, which is the one that we were considering because it's like nice and pretty and has open space and it's like good for holding a wedding. And there's this other space kind of like in the back that kind of is more like a picnic area. And my parents really like that more like a picnic area side. And I'm just like, I feel like that's not super wedding-esque, at least it's not like what we're envisioning. And my parents like, oh, but it's great for a barbecue. And I'm like, yeah, it would be great for a barbecue, but I'm not doing a barbecue at my wedding.
I think another funny thing was that same venue, because the other side was the bigger side, right? And then her parents were like, oh, this is too big. This is too big. We only have like, what, 30 people? And then we're like, we're inviting at least like 150. Like, we can get 150. They're like, you can find 150 people?
Friends?
I'm confused where they think the 30 is coming
It's like
from.
just my
like,
family.
So Quan gets no family, it's only Sisi's family plus Quan. And then you're at 30.
Yeah. And you guys have no friends.
Yeah, doesn't your mom realize you guys like work at church very heavily involved?
Yeah, but she was just like, oh my gosh, the space is so big. Like, it's gonna feel so empty with like no one here. And I'm like, there's not gonna be no one here.
Do you guys feel like you guys have figured out like what your parents are hoping for and expecting and then calibrating that with your own personal hopes and expectations?
Oh, I think it's a constant process of figuring it out. Like
I
what they're
think my
expecting.
parents have been like, I think because they're more receptive of what I say, so they would like, this is what I want to do, and your option, sure, we can do that, but I would do that for another thing. And also but my parents are really respectful of Sisi, because my mom just kept saying like, it's her day, it's Sisi's day, just let her do what she wants to do.
Aw.
That's
you know?
sweet.
Yeah.
So that's how my mom, because I actually didn't know weddings were such a big deal, even like engagement rings. Like when
Yeah.
I was buying an engagement ring, I was like, I'm going to spend this much money. And my parents are like, we need to buy more expensive. Let's give you more money to buy more expensive. I'm like, why? She likes this ring. She's okay with it. There's no point in doing more expensive. So I told my parents, like, you can give me that money for like furniture in a future place or
Right,
something.
yeah.
And they're like, that money is different money. This money is money. And then we're
Your
like,
parents sound
Yeah.
amazing.
I know. I don't think I've ever heard of a parents say that.
No, yeah, my parents are so. That's why I was so shocked because they're
Yeah.
so stingy about everything. But for some reason, when it came to wedding, like even with this venue thing, because
Yeah.
the venue that we saw that was further was like 10K difference from the venue that we're gonna go with, and they're like, "What? Go with the 10K one? That's not a big deal. Closer, better. It looks so much better." I'm like, "Who are you?" they're like, "We need to say buy this on sale. On sale, we're buying this." So I was just like, "What happened to my parents?"
They're like, where's this money when I get toys? Everything I want to play with.
It's everything you bought on sale and now accumulated, so you can cash out on your wedding now.
There you go. That's
So
why-
yeah, so the way that I worked out with my parents, they said we have certain people that we would like to invite, and I don't talk to these people, I don't really know these people, and they're like, but they're really important to us. So I was like, okay, but you are paying for their chair and their food. They're like, okay, just give us the number. I was like, okay, I'm okay with that compromise.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That's a very good deal.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, I think I told my parents, like, all right, you get 20 seats. If you fill it, not my problem.
And did they really stick to that?
Yeah, well, I didn't count family in it. So,
Okay.
so it was like, if you have other friends that you think were like important in quote unquote raising me indirectly, then you get 20 seats.
Yeah.
And that's it. And I think, they stuck with it for the most part.
Yeah.
I mean, it's only, because I think one thing we had to set straight with our parents was like, hey, this isn't like a church wedding where whoever wants to come gets to come, okay?
Yeah.
Like, we need a head count, we need a list, so we need names because they have placeholders, right,
Yeah.
for where they're sitting. So all of that needs to be arranged in advance. And then I think they finally understood. It took a few iterations of telling them that message before they understood.
Communication.
And so after that, it worked out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was the same for me too. I think I was like, we have a set amount of chairs. This is what you guys are gonna get. And then they filled it up and they're like, but we want more. And I'm like, literally the venue cannot hold any more people. So yeah, we ended up doing like a whole nother shindig with my parents' friends, but that was like a whole different story that we will not enter.
Yeah, well, cool. Thanks for joining us. And hopefully we'll do more couple counseling sessions, whether with you two or with other couples.